Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we tackle, stacks of research, articles, books, and boil it all down to the most potent insights we can find. The goal, really, is to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well informed, maybe with a few surprising facts, hopefully enough interest to keep you hooked. Today, though, we're diving headfirst into an idea that might just flip everything you thought you knew about business completely upside down. What if, just what if all that stuff about the glory of competition, the idea that it's the engine of innovation, the best path forward, what if it's actually wrong? What if competition is, well, a destructive force, something that stifles real creativity, tanks value, and just keeps us all stuck in this endless, sometimes pointless fight?
That's exactly it. We're not just tweaking a minor assumption here. We're really challenging a belief system that's um, deeply ingrained in how we think about success. Our focus today is this provocative, almost you could say revolutionary concept from Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1. Thiel basically argues that the ultimate goal, the big prize for any business, shouldn't be just to compete better. It should be to create something so unique, so valuable, that it essentially stands alone. He calls it a creative monopoly.
A creative monopoly. Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that. We want to get into why Thiel thinks competition is often just, a race to the bottom, why it destroys profits, why it stops truly big value creation. And we'll explore what this creative monopoly actually looks like. Why is it presented as, well, not predatory, but actually desirable for the company and maybe even for society?
Right, and then crucially, we'll dig into the practical stuff, the strategies, the sort of powers involved, and maybe look at some real-world examples, companies that actually pulled this off or at least tried to.
Exactly. So get ready, because this is a really powerful new way, potentially, to think about strategy, innovation, and maybe the whole point of starting something new. Okay, so let's kick off with that really bold statement Thiel makes right up front. Competition is for losers. I mean, that definitely grabs your attention, doesn't it?
It really does. It cuts against, well, almost everything we're taught. School, sports, business school. It's always compete harder, be the best relative to others. But Thiel's core idea here attacks competition not just as like an economic force, but as this pervasive ideology.
Ideology, how so?
He suggests it's woven so deeply into society, almost like a religion, that it actively distorts our thinking.
Yeah.
We're kind of programmed to preach it, internalize it, follow its rules.
And the trap.
The trap, the paradox he points out, is that the more intensely we compete within those existing frameworks, the less we actually gain. It's in terms of real breakthrough value anyway.
Okay, that's the part I'm still wrestling with. Competition being destructive. It feels so counterintuitive. How does that paradox actually, manifest in the business world? What makes it so damaging?
Right, and this is where he really challenges those standard assumptions. Think about markets with really fierce competition. You often see a specific set of conditions that, well, lead things downward. Michael Porter, the strategy guru, talked a lot about this. He showed how value gets eroded when you have, say, tons of competitors.
Okay.
They all have roughly equal power. The products are pretty much standardized. Maybe there are high fixed costs pushing everyone to just sell, sell, sell. And often the whole industry isn't growing much.
Right, I can picture that, like airlines maybe?
Exactly like airlines sometimes. Or certain consumer electronics. When those factors combine, Porter called it spread warfare. It doesn't spark innovation. Instead, firms just constantly undercut each other on price. They retaliate instantly. One airline drops fares, they all drop fares. One phone maker adds a minor feature, everyone copies it next quarter.
So it just becomes this endless battle.
It's a constant back and forth that just drains resources, keeps profits super thin for everybody, and basically becomes a cycle of undermining each other, not creating anything genuinely new. It's that race to the bottom we mentioned. Everyone loses. Even the winners just barely survive.
And it's not just the financial hit, right? There are these other maybe hidden costs to that grind. Thiel tells this personal story, the one about the opportunity costs, which I found really striking.
Oh, the Supreme Court clerkship story. Yeah, that's a great illustration.
Right. He applied for this incredibly prestigious, super competitive clerkship. Winning it would be, the peak of achievement in that legal world. But looking back, he realized that winning that ultimate competition would have likely meant spending his career just drafting deals for other people.
Instead of creating anything new himself. Instead of building something from scratch.
Exactly. It makes you think, doesn't it? Even winning in a hyper-competitive arena can mean missing out on the chance to do something truly original.
It's a profound point. Winning the established game might mean you never invent your own. Thiel even had that quip, something like, All raid scholars had a great future in their past.
Ouch. What's he getting at there?
I think he means that by focusing so intensely on winning these predefined, highly competitive races, getting into the top schools, the best jobs you might sort of inadvertently block yourself from forging a truly unique path.
Like you get so good at playing by the existing rules.
That you never break them or make
Yeah.
new ones. It's a subtle trap.
Yeah.
It diverts huge amounts of talent toward just making tiny improvements within the existing system instead of creating something revolutionary, something 0 to 1.
Which leads us perfectly into this idea of red ocean thinking. It's such a vivid metaphor.
It really is. The idea is that so many businesses, even smart ones, are just stuck swimming in these red oceans. Existing markets, known demand, but crowded with competitors, all fighting fiercely.
Bleeding all over each other, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. The water's red. And this is contrasted sharply with blue ocean strategy, which is all about finding or creating new market spaces, uncontested waters, where there are no predators yet.
But it's easy to get confused, right? Managers might think finding a little niche within that red ocean is the same thing.
That's a classic trap. Thinking a slightly smaller target in the same bloody water is a blue ocean. It's not. And another trap is just focusing purely on cutting costs without actually adding more value for the customer. Just being cheaper isn't a blue ocean.
Like that Ouya game console example.
Perfect example. Ouya aimed for a low price point, but it didn't really offer a compelling increase in value compared to the big players like Sony or Nintendo. It was trying to compete on price in a red ocean defined by powerful experiences.
And it didn't end well.
No, it got swallowed up. It shows that just being cheaper in an existing competitive space isn't enough. You need that value innovation.
And this ties into another classic pitfall marketing myopia, defining your business too narrowly.
Right, the famous railroad example. The managers saw themselves purely in the railroad business.
Not the transportation business.
Exactly. So they completely missed the threat and the opportunity presented by trucks and cars offering door-to-door service, more flexibility.
They were optimizing the train, not the journey.
Well put. And the oil companies did something similar, right? Stuck on crude oil, they missed huge plays in natural gas or even missile fuels early on.
So this kind of tunnel vision, focusing only on beating your direct rivals in your current narrow market.
Thiel would argue that kind of monopoly thinking within a competitive box actually leads to decline. You become so obsessed with dominating your little pond that you don't see the tidal wave coming from somewhere else. You miss the chance to create the next pond.
Okay, so if competition is often destructive, red oceans are bad news. What's the alternative path? Thiel champions, we mentioned it. The creative monopoly.
Right. And it's crucial to get this definition straight. It's not about being a ruthless monopolist in the old school sense.
It's not like Standard Oil. We'll get to that later, perhaps.
Exactly. A creative monopoly, in Thiel's view, is about creating something so genuinely new and valuable that you effectively have no real competitors, at least for a while. This allows the creator to capture sustainable profits. But the key is that this monopoly status comes from offering a massive leap in value, something that benefits customers so much, solves a problem so uniquely that rivals just aren't relevant anymore.
So it's earned through innovation, not coercion.
That's the idea. You bake a whole new, much better pie rather than just fighting harder for a slice of the old stale one.
That definitely reframes the whole concept. But still, the word monopoly carries baggage. We think of less choice, higher prices eventually. What are the broader benefits Thiel sees in these creative monopolies, beyond just the company making good profits?
That's a fair question, and Thiel has answers. One major argument is sustainable innovation. Unlike those cutthroat red oceans where everyone's just scraping by, a creative monopoly, with its sustainable profits, can actually afford to make big long-term bets on R&D.
They have the breathing room, the resources.
Exactly. They can fund the kind of research that leads to genuine breakthroughs. New medicines, revolutionary technologies, things that really improve lives. It creates a virtuous cycle. Profit funds innovation, which creates more value, which sustains the profit.
Instead of profit just funding the next price war.
Precisely. And that leads to another benefit: stability and growth, not just for the company, but more broadly. Sustainable profits means stability. You can pay fair wages, invest in your employees' development, plan for the long-term, fund ambitious new projects.
Which sounds better than constantly worrying about layoffs or cutting corners.
It creates these positive feedback loops. Growth benefits shareholders, yes, but also employees, suppliers, maybe even the wider economy. It moves away from that zero-sum, race-to-the-bottom mentality toward generating new wealth and opportunity.
So the third big advantage seems to be focus, without constantly looking over your shoulder.
Right, without that constant draining pressure of immediate competition, the company can actually focus its energy, its talent, its resources on its core mission, creating new value.
Solving bigger problems, not just reacting to rivals' moves.
Exactly. You can dedicate resources to those truly ambitious 0 to 1 projects that might take years to pay off. You can define your own path, push boundaries. Instead of just tweaking existing stuff or playing defense, it's about prioritizing creation over mere survival.
Okay, this vision of the creative monopoly is definitely appealing. It paints a picture of innovation, stability, focus, a clear alternative to the red ocean madness. But how does a company actually do it? What are the practical steps, the powers they need to build this kind of unique position?
Great question. Let's break down the key strategies Thiel outlines. The first, and maybe the most fundamental, is pioneering radical innovation. That 0 to 1 leap we keep mentioning.
Creating something genuinely new from scratch.
Yes, not just improving something that exists that's 1 to n. This is 0 to 1, an entirely new product service solution, building a category where you're the only player, at least initially.
And this links to that classic innovator's dilemma idea, right? Where successful companies often fail because they don't embrace the disruptive stuff early enough.
Absolutely. Clayton Christensen's work is key here. Established companies often get trapped, serving their current profitable customers with incremental improvements. They see disruptive tech as maybe too niche, too low margin initially,
So they ignore it or try to force it into their existing model.
and then get blindsided when that disruption creates a whole new market that makes them obsolete. Thiel argues that companies aiming for creative monopoly don't do that. They don't keep the disruptive tech bottled up. Instead, they actively seek out those small, nascent markets where the new technology, even if imperfect, is highly valued for its unique capabilities. They build a beachhead there, prove the model, and then expand.
Find the niche where the bug is actually a feature.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Find the initial group that loves what this new thing does, even with its limitations, and build from there, away from the immediate glare of the big competitors.
Let's look at some examples. Xerography, the photocopier tech. That wasn't just an improvement, was it?
None at all. Chester Carlson's invention was described as coming from combining a rather odd lot of phenomena. It wasn't based on some clear scientific path everyone else was following. It was truly unconventional, morphological, putting disparate pieces together.
A real 0 to 1 moment.
Definitely. And crucially, the initial invention wasn't any good as a practical product. It took years of belief and investment by Haloid, later Xerox, to turn that breakthrough idea into a world-changing product. That highlights the radical newness and the persistence required.
And then you have someone like Elon Musk, who seems to embody this across different ventures.
Musk is a fascinating case study. With PayPal, it wasn't just about online payments. He pushed for full-fledged internet banking, a great leap forward at the time. It showed an ability to see where technology and user needs were heading.
Reading the trends, yeah. And SpaceX, that seems like a classic example too.
Textbook. He didn't just try to build slightly cheaper versions of the massive rockets Boeing or Lockheed built for huge government satellites. That was a red ocean, high costs, established players.
Right.
Musk saw that electronics were shrinking satellites. This created a potential new market, a blue ocean for launching smaller payloads if you could dramatically lower the cost.
Which is where reusable rockets came in.
Exactly. Radical innovation. Not just incremental improvement, but a fundamental shift that created a whole new market for space access. It enabled things that were simply impossible before. That's 0 to 1.
And Tesla, with its focus on battery tech.
Same pattern. Musk insisted on building batteries and core tech in-house, even though it was way more expensive and difficult initially.
A big gamble.
Huge gamble. But it created proprietary advancements that set it apart from rivals for years and became a massive competitive advantage. They weren't just assembling parts. They were owning and advancing the core enabling technology, creating a resource others couldn't easily match.
There's also the Intuit Quicken example versus Microsoft Money.
Yeah, that's a great one, showing the power of value. Quicken wasn't maybe the absolute first personal finance software, but it delivered such a leap in value, was so intuitive and user-loved.
That even mighty Microsoft couldn't beat it.
Right. Microsoft poured resources into its competitor, Money, for decades, but eventually threw in the towel. Quicken had created such a loyal following and defensible position through sheer user value that even Microsoft couldn't break in.
It really demonstrates the power of getting that initial product market fit so right.
And this connects to an idea from the E-Myth Revisited, the unmakeable promise. True marketing, in this sense, isn't just ads. It's about this relentless, electrifying commitment to improvement.
Delivering something your competitors wouldn't even dare promise.
Exactly. Making a commitment so bold, offering a solution so complete that it totally reframes expectations. It's about creating a new standard of value that makes everyone else look inadequate. That's how you build that monopoly, through sheer perceived value.
Okay, so radical innovation is step one. What's the next power for building these creative monopolies?
Leveraging network effects and economies of scale. These are incredibly powerful forces, especially in the digital age, for building defensible businesses.
Network affects the idea that a product gets more valuable as more people use it.
Precisely. Think social media, marketplaces, review sites. The more users on Facebook, the more valuable it is to you because more of your friends are there. The more sellers on Amazon, the better the selection for buyers, which attracts more buyers, which attracts more sellers.
It's a virtuous cycle.
A very powerful one. It creates what economists call network externalities. And this becomes a huge barrier to imitation. Why would you switch to a new, empty social network? There's scant incentive, almost none.
Even if the new one has slightly best features.
Often, yes. The value of the existing network outweighs minor feature improvements. Think about Google Search, Amazon Reviews, TripAdvisors. Their value is massively tied to the existing user base and data.
And these platforms can even help non-tech products break out now, right?
Absolutely. A small company with a great product can get discovered through Amazon Reviews or social buzz, reaching a global audience without a huge ad budget, just because the network surfaces it.
It's interesting, though, that Thiel says these businesses often need to start small. That seems counterintuitive for network effects.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about it. Facebook didn't launch globally. It started with just Harvard students. The goal was to get everyone in that specific small network first. Dominate that pond.
Create density.
Exactly. Build critical mass in a defined, manageable space. These initial markets often don't even appear to be business opportunities to outsiders, which is actually an advantage. It keeps competition away while you build momentum. You conquer one small network, then move to the next adjacent one.
And once you start growing, that's when economies of scale really kick in.
Yes. A monopoly business, Thiel says, gets stronger as it gets bigger. The basic idea of economies of scale is spreading your fixed costs over more units.
Like the cost of developing software or building a factory.
Right. The initial investment is high, but the cost of producing one more unit becomes very low. Software is the ultimate example. The marginal cost of making another copy is close to zero,
So you can scale up massively and your cost per user plummets.
which gives you an incredible cost advantage over smaller players trying to enter. It becomes almost impossible for them to compete on price or invest as heavily in further development.
Now, what about globalization? You'd think that makes it easier to compete from anywhere, but Thiel points out a paradox.
It's interesting. While globalization connects everyone, he argues it has actually increased the value of being in a premier scaling hub like Silicon Valley or China,
How does that work?
because these specific places become magnets. They attract the best talent, the most venture capital, the densest networks of expertise, all from around the world.
A concentration effect.
Exactly. It creates this self-reinforcing ecosystem that's incredibly good at launching and scaling companies like Uber or Pinterest really, really fast.
So while you can reach globally from anywhere, the actual resources and speed needed to build a dominant, scaled-up, creative monopoly often still benefit hugely from being in one of these hubs.
Okay, strategy 3. Cultivating cornered resources and unique capabilities. This sounds like having something special that others just can't copy.
That's exactly it. It goes beyond just a good product. A cornered resource is something that provides a unique, sustainable advantage, potential for differential returns, as the economists say. It's inimitable.
And the Pixar example is fascinating here. Their incredible run of successful, acclaimed films wasn't just luck.
No, analysts pointed to a factor X behind their predictable, recurrent triumphs. Something systemic.
And that factor X wasn't just one person.
The argument is that the Pixar brain trust as a unit was the cornered resource, not just Steve Jobs, Ed Catmull, or John Lasseter individually, though they were obviously key.
So it was the way they worked together. Yes, their structured process of intense, candid feedback, iterative development, the shared culture and vision. It was a collective capability that other studios couldn't easily replicate, even by hiring Pixar people.
The fact that later, newer directors at Pixar sometimes struggled seems to support that idea. It wasn't just about individual genius, but the collective system.
Right. It suggests the unique advantage lay in that collaborative unit, that specific way of working together to solve incredibly complex creative problems. That was the resource they had cornered.
It's a powerful idea, the resource being a process or a culture.
And we see a different kind of cornered resource with Musk, again, at Tesla. His insistence on building core tech in-house.
Like the batteries we mentioned.
Yes, it was expensive and hard, but it created proprietary technology, a unique capability in battery design and manufacturing. That became a great advantage, setting them apart. They cornered the resource of that specific technological expertise by developing it themselves, rather than just buying it off the shelf.
Owning the core differentiator.
Exactly. And finally, there's the power of brand, but earned brand, not just bought brand.
How does that work as a cornered resource?
When a company truly delivers that leap in value, it rapidly earns brand buzz and a loyal following. Think early Apple or Google search. People talked about them, recommended them, because the products were genuinely transformative.
It's word of mouth built on real value.
And that earned reputation, that loyalty, becomes incredibly strong.
Yeah.
So strong that even large advertising budgets by an aggressive imitator rarely have the strength to overtake it. The trust and positive association become a deeply ingrained, cornered resource that's very hard for competitors to replicate quickly, no matter how much they spend on ads.
Okay, strategy number 4. Strategic market definition and blue ocean creation. This sounds like being smart about where you choose to play.
It is. It's about proactively shaping your competitive environment. A key part of strategy is making deliberate choices about which customer groups to target.
And the idea is to pick customers who don't have too much power over you.
Essentially, yes. Find buyers who possess the least power to influence it adversely. Often, this means customers who are less price sensitive.
Like the replacement parts example. If my specific machine breaks, I need that part, I'm probably less focused on shaving pennies than a giant manufacturer buying millions of components.
Exactly. The OEM market might be hyper-competitive on price, while the replacement or aftermarket is less so because the buyer has a specific, urgent need and fewer alternatives. Choosing the right segment can dramatically change your strategic position.
So it's about finding where your unique value is most appreciated and less likely to be commoditized.
Precisely. Which leads us back to blue ocean strategy, creating that new market space where competition is simply irrelevant because you're offering something fundamentally different.
Value innovation, again better value for customers, often at lower cost for the company, by breaking the existing trade-offs.
Yes, changing the rules of the game, not just playing it better. Designing an offering that meets needs no one else is addressing, or does it in a vastly superior way?
And sometimes the market itself can create a kind of monopoly, right? A natural monopoly.
That can happen. A market might simply be too small to support another player. The Kinepolis Megaplex Cinema in Brussels is the classic example.
One huge cinema complex, and no one built a competitor for decades.
Because the Brussels market just wasn't big enough for two. A second megaplex would likely cause both to lose money. The market economics created a natural barrier to entry. It wasn't illegal for someone else to build one, it just wouldn't have made financial sense.
That's a powerful economic barrier, and of course there are legal barriers too.
Absolutely. Patents, copyrights, sometimes exclusive licenses, or permits these grant exclusive legal rights that formally block imitation, at least for a set period.
Like for new drugs.
Exactly. These legal protections are designed to secure the value innovator's position, allowing them to recoup their investment in that difficult 0-to-1 creation and encouraging future innovation.
Okay, final strategy. Operational excellence and customer obsession. This feels like the foundation that makes everything else stick.
It really is. You can have a brilliant innovation or strategy, but if you can't execute consistently and keep customers happy, it won't last. Look at Walmart under Sam Walton. His mantra, let's be out front, let's do it right, let's get it done now. That speaks to a culture of relentless execution and continuous improvement.
And that store within a store idea.
Empowering department heads to act like real merchants, giving them ownership. That fostered pride, built skills, and created this internal drive for merchandising excellence. It wasn't just top-down efficiency, it was distributed capability.
Building excellence from the ground up, Starbucks offers a different flavor of this, more emotional.
Definitely more heart-led. That commitment to the quality of the coffee itself, like Dave Olson's original espresso roast still being used. And Howard Schultz's vision wasn't just coffee. It was the passion, the point of view, the third place experience.
And that focus on do well and do good, treating employees well.
Huge part of their brand loyalty. Offering benefits, trying to be a good corporate citizen. Plus, their willingness to admit mistakes, like with controversial holiday cups, showed a kind of resilience and customer focus. It builds a relationship, not just a transaction.
And then there's Amazon, the absolute epitome of customer obsession.
Almost legendary, right? Bezos' relentless focus on the customer experience, lower prices, wider selection, faster delivery, and thinking big. That obsession drove so much of their innovation and dominance.
But even Amazon hit limits, like with the jewelry example.
Right. People still wanted to see and touch engagement rings in actual stores. It shows that even obsessive customer focus has boundaries. Some markets, some purchase decisions have deep-seated emotional or experiential needs that even the most efficient online model can't fully replicate. You can't monopolize everything just through logistics and clicks.
So we've spent a good chunk of time unpacking Thiel's case for creative monopolies, why competition might be bad, how to build these unique businesses. But we need to zoom out a bit, right? Consider the broader picture, the downsides, the history.
Absolutely critical. Thiel's vision is compelling. But monopolies, even creative ones, exist in a complex world. We should look at other perspectives and historical context.
Milton Friedman, for example, had a somewhat different take on unregulated monopolies.
He did. Friedman suggested that sometimes private, unregulated monopoly might be the least of evils, especially if it's likely to be temporary.
Why did he think that?
He argued that dynamic changes in the market, new technologies, shifting consumer tastes, are highly likely to undermine a monopoly over time. Innovation from outside, or the threat of it, acts as a check. He felt there was at least some chance these market forces would be allowed to work.
And he was also skeptical of regulation.
Very much so. He famously observed that regulatory agencies often fall under the control of the producers they're supposed to regulate, so government intervention might not be the effective check people assume it is, and could even entrench the monopoly.
It's an argument for letting market forces, however imperfectly, sort things out over time.
It relies on that dynamism, the potential for disruption always being present. But history certainly gives us examples where that didn't happen easily, or where the monopoly power was used quite aggressively.
Which brings us to Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller. Not exactly Thiel's model of a creative monopoly built purely on value.
Far from it. Standard Oil is the classic example of monopoly built through aggressive, often ruthless, consolidation and tactics.
Like using unaccountable shortages to squeeze competitors.
Yes, controlling pipelines and refineries to create artificial bottlenecks, and explicit threats telling smaller refiners, you are helpless, you will have to sell out. It was about crushing competition, not just out-innovating it.
And Rockefeller played the political game too, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He made significant campaign contributions, engaged with politicians directly, even while Standard Oil was being widely condemned for its practices. It shows that immense market power often becomes intertwined with political influence, creating a system that can be very resistant to checks and balances.
So, Standard Oil's story is a stark reminder that monopoly power can be achieved and wielded in ways that raise serious ethical questions and harm competitors and potentially consumers, far from the ideal of pure value creation.
And these concerns aren't just ancient history. Think about today's digital landscape.
The big tech platforms.
Exactly. Many argue these monopolistic online platforms remain privately owned and largely unregulated, despite having enormous influence over information, commerce, and even democracy.
And the issues raised are huge. Privacy, control of information, their sheer commercial power.
Right. Unlike older monopolies like railroads or utilities, which eventually face significant regulation or public ownership, these digital giants operate in a relatively newer, less defined regulatory space, leading to constant debate about their power and responsibility.
There's also that paradox you mentioned earlier, public investment fueling private gain.
Yes. The fact that many hugely successful tech companies pay relatively low tax rates, even though key underlying technologies they rely on the internet, GPS, semiconductors, touchscreens, received significant, high-risk public investments in their early stages.
So the question becomes, should these incredibly profitable companies whose success rests partly on taxpayer-funded R&D be repaying the taxpayer, not seeking tax breaks?
It highlights a real tension about who captures the value generated by innovation, especially when public funding de-risked the initial exploration. It raises questions about fairness in the ecosystem.
And even with these dominant players, the landscape isn't static, right? The pace of change itself is a force.
Definitely. Look at the financial industry. Community banks aren't just competing with big banks anymore. They're challenged by the rise of fintech companies like Square, PayPal, and countless smaller startups.
It's the pace of change itself that's disruptive.
Exactly. It shows that even established industries, even ones with powerful incumbents, are constantly under pressure from new innovators, many of whom are trying to build their own kind of creative monopoly using new technology or business models. It underscores Thiel's point, maybe, that even if you achieve dominance, you can't rest. The next 0 to 1 innovation could be just around the corner.
Wow. Okay, what an incredible journey through this idea. We really have challenged that default belief in the goodness of competition today. Peter Thiel's framework in 0 to 1, that competition is for losers, it forces you to think differently. That true progress, real value, doesn't come from just fighting better in a crowded market.
But from creating these creative monopolies, building something so new, so valuable, that competition just isn't the main story anymore.
And we've dug into how companies try to do that, that radical 0 to 1 innovation like Xerox or SpaceX.
Leveraging those powerful network effects and economies of scale. Finding or building unique cornered resources, like Pixar's Brain Trust or Tesla's battery tech.
Strategically creating blue oceans where you make the rules. And underpinning it all, that relentless operational excellence and customer obsession we saw in Walmart, Starbucks, maybe Amazon.
But we also had to acknowledge the complexities. Contrasting Thiel's ideal with the historical reality of monopolies like Standard Oil, and grappling with the very real concerns about market power, regulation, and fairness surrounding today's dominant tech platforms. So, as we wrap this deep dive up, here's something to really mull over. In a world that constantly pushes us to compete, to compare, to just be slightly better than the next person or company, how might you shift your focus? Armed with this perspective, how could you move from just trying to outperform others towards uniquely creating something new and valuable, something that truly stands apart? What category of one could you possibly cultivate? Maybe in your job, a side project, even a personal passion, a space where your contribution is so distinct, so uniquely you, that direct rivalry just fades as the primary concern. Think about the potential, the value you could unlock if you stepped out of that competitive race and into creating your own uncontested space. What would that look like for you?